Did this rub you the wrong way? Michael Lombardi, former GM in the NFL, now media guy, talking about this on the GM Shuffle podcast. Listen to what he said about Trey Lance.
As you go down this road with Lance, it just becomes harder and harder and harder. And you could show all the clips of him moving and all that stuff. At the end of the day, when his mama lifted him from the crib, he just didn't have that quarterback instinct. He is not going to be the backup quarterback. I don't know what they're going to do with him, but there's no chance. There is no chance based on the evidence that I've seen and based on what I've heard.
Michael, I asked you this before we ended the Lombardi line yesterday on VSiN. I think that he might be competing to stay on the 53-man roster. Like, is that where we at with Trey Lance right now? Like, are these reps looking for him to be able to say, can he stay on this roster and be a viable 49er?
Well, I think you got to look at this, right? Like, you know that once you reach a conclusion on a player, okay, once you really have a handle on who the player is, then you've got to make some decisions.
Okay, so what he's saying there at the end, once you feel like you have a handle on the player, you got to make some decisions. That feels cookie cutter enough to me. There are a lot of people very, very upset about his comment about when his mom picked him up out of the crib, like, you know, he didn't have it. Some are saying that this is out of line. Some are saying it's racist.
I think there's some undertones there. I didn't like it. I didn't like how it sounded.
I didn't like it at all, but I was honestly confused by it more than any of those other things. I'm like, I don't even understand what you're trying to say. Why would... What, like, are you saying that? Okay,
to me, it's an intelligence question.
Okay, but let's take Patrick Mahomes. Are you saying that when mom picked him up out of the crib, they knew right away? Like,
no, I think you're taking it too far. I just think it's he just never had it from birth. He just doesn't have the brains. Because to me, when you're saying instinct is brains.
Do you know what the crazy thing is? Do you want to know the one thing I do think Trey has?
He does for sure.
He's got the brains.
And then it goes to, well, why would you say that? But why would anybody think that?
Yeah, it didn't.
Like when you
didn't feel good.
When you start to go down, it's like, well, why would anybody think that? And to me, I don't know. The first thing I thought was when I heard it was that has some racial undertones to it that are just awful, like unsavory.
I didn't like it the minute I heard it, but the more I played it, I don't even get it. I didn't understand it well enough to be offended by it.
It's like you were born wrong. Like that, like to me, that in and of itself to me is.
Let's hear it again. And then Raheem Mostert has been among those who's responded to it. We'll have that for you in a sec. Here it is again, Michael Lombardi.
As you go down this road with Lance, it just becomes harder and harder and harder. And you could show all the clips of him moving and all that stuff. At the end of the day, when his mama lifted him from the crib, he just didn't have that quarterback instinct.
Okay. When his mama lifted him from the crib, he didn't have that quarterback instinct. Yeah, I don't know. Again, it didn't feel good. But I also think it's an ineffective criticism, is what I would say, because it doesn't even. But partially because it just doesn't even make sense. What are we talking about when mama lifts you from the crib? I mean, one of the things that I'm really trying to get across, in my opinion, in this entire quarterback conversation is, can you all stop falling in love with the baseline of what you think this is supposed to look like? You know what I mean? When mama lifted you from the crib, what did Brock Purdy look like when mama lifted him from the crib? I don't know. 6 pounds, 13 ounces, and probably pretty ordinary. But look at him now.
No, but I think what a lot of people who have watched him now play these 8 games would say is, well, by contrast, maybe he had the instinct because he doesn't have the physical tools and the other components to it.
Kyle Shanahan was asked about, and it wasn't just specifically this comment, but the way the national media talks about Trey Lance. Here's Kyle's response.
It just goes with the territory. I mean, it goes with it for quarterbacks. It goes with it for anybody who's a high draft pick, but especially a quarterback. And that's one of the tough things, I think, for that position, but also for high draft picks. I mean, you watch receivers come in the league and they have a few drops early in camp, and there becomes a lot of pressure on them. People want to see those people take off and do it right away and have no flaws, and that's just part of it.
I will say this. Even though, yes, there's been some commentary that I don't love, Kyle's right. Like, Trey Lance is famous. Trey Lance is famous, and the world right now is very mean when you're famous, and especially when you're not doing that well. And if you're going to have trouble handling this, and oh, by the way, I don't think Trey does. Kyle's absolutely right. Like, Trey has handled this perfectly. It's part of what makes this all so difficult is Trey handles it with class, and he's smart, and he's nice, and he smiles at people and looks you in the eye when he answers your questions. Like, he does nothing wrong. But if you were, let's say he wasn't handling it well, let's say he Ryan Leafed all this.
Right.
If you can't handle this, then you can't handle quarterbacking. You're the guy every week, the hero, the GOAT, no matter what.
No doubt. I think there's just been such a rush, and we touched on this at the beginning of the show today. There's been such a rush, Mark, to, go to these extremes on the bad now. And I know we're going to have JT O'Sullivan on. He provided a great breakdown of it, but it just Trey Lance can be the third best 49er quarterback, and that doesn't mean that Trey Lance stinks, because I haven't seen a quarterback that just flat out stinks, can't play, can't be in the NFL when I've watched him at practice. And even Sunday, like, he got better as the game went on. Now, that doesn't mean he's the 2 or should be the 1 or anything like that. But it just seems like there's such an extreme, like, everybody wants to tie this extreme opinion to Trey Lance constantly, both on the negative and the positive. And the truth is, it's somewhere in between.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to Tyler in Livermore with Willard and JD. Hey, Tyler, thanks for your patience. What's going on, man?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that we kind of forget about, it's not really on Trey or Purdy. It's more so just on how NFL quarterbacks are just scouted and what qualities they're actually looking for first. Because if you look at the NFL Combine, it's all individualized, whereas when you're actually playing football, it's the collection of the talents and attributes. And so I think that's forgotten, honestly. And I think just evaluating a player's individual talent and attributes alone together is the reason why, like, for example, maybe Trey Lance hasn't performed how we thought and Purdy overperformed is what we thought, just due to the fact of the title of the draft pick and how they're
all right, yeah, Tyler, your connection was not great. Sorry about that, but I think we got the gist of it. I don't know. My reaction to that is this. I think that it works better, and I know this is not reality, so it's not going to work. But it works better, and I do think teams largely do this, not always, but it works better when as soon as the draft is over, you wipe the board clean. And just forget wherever the hell people were picked, and just go with what you see.
Yeah, that's never happening.
It does more inside the building than out. It does. You know what I mean? I'm not going to name his name,
That's
but
fair.
I know within the last, this might be even as much as 20 years ago, there was a first-round draft pick for the 49ers, and he walked in the building, and, like, it took everybody 2 minutes, and they're like, oof, nope. Whoops. And that person's career was not very long. What are you going to do? It's just like any mistake that we make in life. You're only going to make it worse by following it up with another mistake. It's just like a lie. When you cover a lie with another lie and then another lie and another lie, it's going to blow up at some point. So what are you going to do? This idea that many of you have that Trey Lance is owed this, that, or the other because of where he's drafted, I think is a real mistake. I think that's a real mistake. Trey Lance is owed, first of all, his paycheck, and he is owed whatever he earns. And I believe that he's gotten both of those things over and over again.
Yeah, and there has been some bad injury luck,
Absolutely.
I think, which is probably the thing that you could claim most has worked against him in this, but unfortunately, that's the way it goes sometimes. And I think the 49ers would gladly explain to you that's been the biggest component in all of this, is that, hey, if he hadn't gotten hurt, he'd be a lot farther along. And that's not only the injury from last year, but it's also the injury from the offseason leading into last year, which really wrecked that year
No
one
doubt.
to year two offseason.
No doubt.
Like that's the one. Like he didn't make the strides in that first offseason after his rookie year because of the finger injury, and so he was set back from where I think they had hoped he would have been a year ago. Right now, in more ways than we even knew a year ago on this date when he was still preparing to be the number one quarterback.
I agree with that. I mean, injuries stink. I do think it's funny, though, and it's based – I don't think it's something that where people are coming from a bad place. I think it's based on our excitement level. Like, when you use 3 years of first-round capital to get a quarterback, that's exciting to a fan base. And, and so we want to see it.
Everybody thought it was Josh Allen or Pat Mahomes or Lamar Jackson or Herbert.
It's like I look at Trey Lance's career very much like the Philadelphia game last year. Like, we got all ramped up for something that we never got to see.
Yeah, you're thinking that.
And it stinks. It absolutely stinks out loud. By the same token, please don't use Trey Lance's injuries to act like that's unique in the NFL. Everybody's working through this stuff constantly. Jimmy's hurt. Brock's hurt. You know, if I tried to use injury as an excuse for Jimmy Garoppolo, what would you all say then? What would you say? Oh, they lost the NFC title game at SoFi Stadium. Yeah, but his hand and his arm and, oh my gosh, y'all would have lost your minds. So that is part of the deal. Has he been dealt a couple of difficult things? No question. But in my opinion, he has absolutely been given everything that he's earned. And the 49ers have actually, I not only, JD, I don't think they were just fair. I think that they have gone out of their way to make things, what's the right word? I don't want to say advantageous. I think they've gone out of their way to support Trey. I think they've gone out of their way to say the right things, try their best to create the right scenarios for him, to continue. 3 camps now of like, let's do reps. They had a separate book for him at one point, you know, with his plays that they thought were tailored to him that we saw in Chicago and Seattle that nobody liked. I mean, I think that they've done everything that you try to do for a major investment.
I would agree. I think they have. I think, you know, at some point, though, it became not about his development anymore and more about can he help us with a specific role. And I think Brock Purdy was the one, based on how he played, who changed that conversation. He was so good in ways that Trey just hadn't been, in part because he got the opportunity, but more so because he got the opportunity and he ran with it, and he played at a level in the 8 games that, as Kyle Shanahan said, nobody's played at in, you know, a long time, and for the 49ers. And so he's got, now that changes the conversation for Trey. Now it's, hey, we still want you around, but we're going to slow play it. We're going to slow play it initially, then it's your job. Well, now we're back to the slow play it plan.
You think they still want him around?
I do.
And I want to qualify my question now.
Okay.
Jump
the gun there on you.
Well, I don't think that of course they like him. And so therefore he is a positive influence within the locker room and all of that. But they made trade calls 5 months ago. So, you know, if somebody would offer a second or third round draft pick, he probably wouldn't be here.
Well, that's true.
So, I mean, in a perfect world, what do you think the 49ers want to have happen right now? I know. It's a big question, isn't it?
That I don't know the answer to. But I do think they're comfortable enough. If he's the 3, I think they're comfortable having him be the 3. I really do believe that.
They're not in the urgency.
The fan base may not be.
I know. Well, they're not in the urgency that people think they are. You're right. Like there is actually, and this is rare, there's no reason that Trey cannot be on the team this year. I know a lot of people are like, third overall pick, you can't do this. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. A lot of times it's not the case. I get it. When somebody just has that, Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers got to a point where it's like, we're not having you both here. We got to get you out of here.
Year 4.
Right. We got like, this is just too much. Trey's not that, partially because of how good of a dude he is. But the 49ers are not, their hand is not being forced.
No, and I could see, and I know our buddy Larry Krueger has mentioned this a lot, I could see Trey saying, hey, I want to be traded, or his agent saying, hey, I want to be traded.
Sure.
You don't have to. And I probably wouldn't, because at that point, what are you going to get? Like, what does Trey Lance net you right now? A 6?
Well, here's where
a 5?
Here's where we could have an actual conversation about the media's national discussion of Trey Lance. Here's where this is actually a tangible problem. Whether or not the rest of the league all watched on Sunday and decided Trey can't play, when you want to talk about trade value, what team is now going to go out and give a big draft pick for Trey Lance, even if they did believe him? Steve Mariucci came on our show yesterday and said these teams all had a first-round grade on him. They all had a first-round grade on him. So who wouldn't be interested in bringing him in to take a look? Well, now your fan base is going to lose their mind if you sent a second-round pick for Trey Lance, because throughout the nation, on every show, people are saying things like, Mama went into his crib and just saw nothing. That's the problem with the way this is being discussed. That's the actual tangible problem.
What do you think the value is? So you think there should be a higher value attached to him?
Well,
I mean, that seems a little have your cake and eat it too.
No, I don't think there should be. I think there would be. I don't think that. I have no idea. I'm not a draft Nick. I don't know how to assess a draft pick to a guy.
Yeah, I don't either.
Do you know what I mean?
Like, no, I don't either. But
if I were running a team and I didn't have if I were Tampa, would I give you a 5 to take a look? Probably.
Yeah. I think
probably
that's about
would.
right.
Maybe even a 4. I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
but a 4th-round pick for the 3rd pick in the draft
is a terrible ROI.
It's just I wouldn't be
right.
I wouldn't be comfortable doing that if
but so is a 3. So's a 2.
I'd probably take a 3.
I mean, you would, but the point is it's not good ROI.
No,
you gave up. This is 3 years of first-round capital. If that's what you get back, that's a bad deal. It's a terrible deal. I'm with you, though, that they'd probably take it right now.
I would just want to reserve the right to be able to have him on the roster if all hell breaks loose and you do lose 2 quarterbacks again.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I would rather, to me, it's almost covering your own bases, right?
Well,
covering all the bases. You're going to go with Brock. If something happens to Brock, you've got Sam. If Sam wins the job, if something happens to Sam, well, then you know what? Let her rip with Trey.
The season is probably cooked, so
it would be if it's Brandon Allen.
Right. Brandon Allen is not going to Brock Purdy this year. I agree with you.
At that point, you might as well let Trey have an opportunity with the ones.
Totally agree.
And he may turn into somebody that, at a minimum, is worthy of one of those picks.